Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. In a stunning move, Canada has officially withdrawn from tariff negotiations with the United States, abruptly ending months of tense talks. The announcement from Prime Minister Trudeau's office signals a major policy shift, reflecting Ottawa's frustration with what it saw as unproductive discussions and American intransigence. Trudeau stated Canada would not negotiate under duress or accept a deal that undermines its national interests. This decision halts one of North America's most important economic dialogues, leaving key issues like steel, aluminum, dairy, and lumber unresolved. The talks had promised stability for businesses and workers, but now uncertainty looms. Sources say Canada felt the Trump administration was using tariff threats to force one-sided gains, eroding trust and making further negotiation futile. The sudden withdrawal has caught Washington off guard and thrown the future of North American trade into doubt. For now, Canada has stepped away, perhaps for good. Tariff talks are high-stakes negotiations between countries, where leaders and trade representatives come together to decide whether to set, reduce, or remove taxes on imported goods. These taxes, known as tariffs, are a key tool in international trade policy. Tariffs are essentially fees that can make foreign products more expensive for consumers and businesses. When you buy something made abroad, part of the price you pay might be due to these tariffs. For the US and Canada, tariff talks are especially crucial. Every day, billions of dollars in goods, everything from cars to fresh produce, cross the border. Low tariffs help keep these supply chains efficient and ensure that products move quickly and affordably between the two countries. When tariffs go up, the cost of doing business rises too. This means higher prices for cars, appliances, groceries, and even electronics. Both businesses and everyday consumers feel the impact as their budgets are stretched further. On one hand, tariffs can protect certain jobs by making imported goods less competitive, giving local industries a chance to grow. But on the other hand, they can threaten jobs in industries that depend on cross-border trade, especially those that rely on imported materials or export their products abroad. If these talks break down, both countries are left in a state of uncertainty. Existing tariffs are likely to stay in place, and the risk of a trade war, where each side keeps raising tariffs in retaliation, becomes much higher. Without a new agreement, businesses face instability and may delay investments or hiring. Jobs are put at risk, and the cost of living can rise, making everyday life more challenging for families. The failure of these talks represents a missed opportunity to restore predictability to the market and avoid a spiral of escalating economic conflict that could hurt both nations. Now both the US and Canada must brace for the fallout. The uncertainty affects not just big corporations but also small businesses and workers everywhere. The stakes are incredibly high, not just for multinational companies but for workers, families, and communities on both sides of the border who depend on stable trade. The breakdown of negotiations could trigger a cycle of retaliation, with each country imposing new tariffs in response, ultimately hurting everyone involved. This is why these negotiations mattered so much. They were a chance to prevent conflict and keep trade flowing smoothly. With talks now dead, the threat of a trade war is very real, and the consequences could ripple through economies, businesses, and households for months or even years to come. The US and Canada have long been each other's top trading partners, bound by agreements like NAFTA and USMCA that created a vast free trade zone. Every day, nearly $2 billion in goods and services cross the border, supporting millions of jobs. American states rely on Canadian markets for exports, while Canada sends most of its goods, oil, lumber, aluminum, to the US. This deep integration means economic shocks on one side quickly ripple to the other. For decades, disputes were quietly resolved, and a trade war seemed unthinkable. But the Trump administration's confrontational approach, using tariffs as leverage, has strained this partnership. The collapse of talks is the result of years of growing friction and eroding trust. What was once a model of stability is now a source of uncertainty. The economic ties remain, but the spirit of cooperation is badly damaged. The future of this vital relationship is now in question. Canada's decision to walk away from the negotiating table wasn't made lightly. It came after months of mounting frustration with what it saw as one-sided US demands that seemed to ignore Canada's core interests and concerns. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as talks dragged on, with Canadian officials feeling their voices were being sidelined. The Trump administration's repeated use of tariff threats, especially on steel and aluminum, created an atmosphere of deep distrust. These tariffs hit Canadian industries hard, putting thousands of jobs at risk and straining the long-standing economic partnership between the two countries. Canada had expected those tariffs to be lifted as part of any new trade deal, seeing their removal as a basic requirement for progress. But U.S. negotiators refused to commit, instead tying the end of tariffs to unrelated demands in agriculture and intellectual property, making the process even more complicated and frustrating for Canadian officials. The U.S. also pushed aggressively for greater access to Canada's protected dairy market, a politically sensitive issue that touches the livelihoods of thousands of Canadian families and the fabric of rural communities. For Canada, dismantling its supply management system was a step too far. Such a move would threaten the stability of thousands of farmers, potentially devastating rural economies and sparking widespread unrest among agricultural communities. Facing mounting political pressure at home, Trudeau's government made it clear it would not sacrifice key industries without meaningful concessions from the U.S. The stakes were simply too high for Canada to back down without securing real benefits for its people. Ultimately, after weighing the risks, Canada concluded that accepting a bad deal was worse than walking away with no deal at all. The country's negotiators left the table, signaling their unwillingness to compromise on fundamental issues. The constant threats, shifting demands, and lack of trust destroyed any hope for a fair agreement. The relationship between the two countries was tested as never before. Walking away was a calculated risk, a bold stand for economic sovereignty and fairness. It was a message that Canada would defend its interests, even in the face of uncertainty. Canada signaled to the world that it would not be bullied, even if it meant facing short-term economic uncertainty and volatility in its markets. The government braced for potential fallout, but stood firm. The message to Washington was clear. Canada won't accept an unbalanced agreement that puts its workers and industries at risk. The country's leaders emphasized the importance of fair trade over quick fixes. The cost of compromise in this case was simply too high. Accepting unfavorable terms would have long-term consequences for Canadian businesses and families. For now, Canada is standing its ground, determined to protect its economy, its people, and its future, no matter how tough the road ahead may be. The collapse of talks is a major setback for President Trump, who built his image as a master dealmaker. For months, he promised a breakthrough, assuring supporters that his tough stance would deliver better results for American workers and businesses. Now, with negotiations in shambles, that carefully crafted reputation is under intense scrutiny. Canada's public withdrawal challenges his hardball tactics and raises doubts about his approach to trade. The move signals to the world that not all U.S. allies are willing to bend to pressure, and it puts Trump's strategy in the global spotlight. Key U.S. industries, auto, agriculture, now face prolonged uncertainty, especially in regions that have supported Trump. Workers and families in these sectors are left wondering how long they can weather the storm, as the future of their livelihoods hangs in the balance. Business leaders and farmers are frustrated, questioning whether tariffs are helping or hurting them. Many are voicing concerns that the ongoing standoff could lead to job losses, higher costs, and shrinking markets for their products. Within the Republican Party, free trade advocates may become more vocal, deepening divisions. Some lawmakers are urging a return to negotiation, while others back Trump's confrontational approach, creating a rift that could impact party unity. Trump now faces a dilemma: escalate with new tariffs and risk a trade war, or try to reopen talks and appear weak. Each option carries significant consequences, both economically and politically, and the pressure is mounting from all sides. Either path carries political risks. The wrong move could alienate key supporters or embolden his critics, making the stakes even higher as the next election approaches. The image of the dealmaker is tarnished, and Trump must manage the fallout. Every decision he makes now will be closely analyzed by the public, the media, and his political opponents. His next move will shape both the economy and his political future. Advisors are weighing options, knowing that the outcome could influence markets and voter confidence for months to come. The stakes are high, and the margin for error is slim. A single misstep could trigger economic turmoil or further erode trust in his leadership. Allies and critics alike are watching closely. The world is waiting to see whether Trump can recover from this setback or if it will define his legacy on the global stage. the outcome could define his presidency, shaping how history remembers his time in office and his impact on America's role in the world. In Canada, the withdrawal has sparked both pride and anxiety. Many support standing up to U.S. pressure but worry about jobs and rising costs. Industries like manufacturing and energy brace for tough times while small businesses fear disruption. In the U.S., reactions are mixed. Border states and trade-dependent sectors are alarmed, while others see it through a partisan lens. Some Americans support Trump's tough stance, others blame him for the chaos. For many, the impact isn't yet visible, but a prolonged dispute could quickly hit wallets. Both countries' citizens are left hoping for stability, but bracing for more uncertainty. The human cost of this standoff is just beginning to emerge. With talks off, the US-Canada trade relationship enters a volatile phase. Existing tariffs remain, prolonging economic pain for businesses and consumers. The risk of escalation is real. Trump could impose new tariffs, prompting Canadian retaliation and a cycle of economic damage. Alternatively, both sides might settle into a tense, cold peace, with no new tariffs but no progress. Trust is badly damaged. Resuming talks would require a major shift, likely from the US. Canada insists it won't return under current conditions. A breakthrough would need a significant US concession, like lifting steel and aluminum tariffs. Given the political climate, that's unlikely soon. The stalemate could last until leadership changes in either country. For now, uncertainty is the new normal. The US-Canada breakdown sends shockwaves far beyond North America. It signals to the world that even close allies can't resolve disputes, undermining faith in global trade rules. Other countries may adopt protectionist policies, risking a domino effect of tariffs and slower global growth. International organizations like the WTO appear sidelined as powerful nations act unilaterally. America's allies worry about their own future dealings with Washington, while rivals like China see opportunities to expand influence. The fractured alliance could weaken the West's ability to confront global challenges. New trading blocs may emerge, reducing US economic clout. The world is watching and recalibrating. Canada's walkout marks a turning point in US-Canada relations. Trudeau's government has rejected what it sees as unfair tactics, plunging North American trade into uncertainty. Tariffs remain and the threat of a wider trade war looms. For Trump, it's a political setback. For citizens, it's a source of anxiety and division. Decades of cooperation are now at risk, with supply chains and jobs in jeopardy. Rebuilding trust will require a new approach from Washington and a renewed commitment to diplomacy. Without it, one of the world's most successful partnerships could become a casualty of political turmoil. The future for these two nations, so closely linked, has never been more uncertain.